Now, given that the Fantastic Four's opening weekend box office numbers are now made official at to be around $260 million, that's worldwide, by the way, those are global numbers, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the next couple of days are going to be like leading into this upcoming weekend. However, we know a lot of those out there, like Disney CEO Bob Iger and even Pedro Pascal, are deciding to actually drag in many of their terrible opinions, by the way, about Marvel fans, about some Marvel critics out there, really comparing this film's opening weekend box office numbers to other films out there like Ant-Man 3 and Brave New World, and how Pedro Pascal continues to actually say the worst things possible in the middle of the press tour, of the marketing campaign, and in the middle of this movie's theatrical run in movie theaters around the globe. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Pedro Pascal that I will say is that he never actually gets a clue, he never gets the memo when to actually call it quits or to actually just shut up already and stop saying the most insane things out there that really could contribute to a lot of Marvel fans saying no to this movie and deciding to not go ahead and see it. Now, one thing about Pedro is that we know that number one, he always likes to make things political. Number two, he always likes to actually go against fans out there. He always likes to defend movies and defend himself in probably the most unprofessional way that he can, and it really just does not help anybody. It doesn't help himself, it doesn't help the studio, it doesn't help the movie, or the movies, because he's done this several times. But what's interesting here has a lot more to do with Pedro's most recent take on Marvel fans, Marvel critics, and how they perceive specific characters in this movie. Let's get into it. Now, with the Walt Disney Company and Marvel Studios desperate for the Fantastic Four to be a major hit at the box office, one significant development going on now involves more to do with actor Pedro Pascal in the middle of the Fantastic Four press tour, and how he just keeps making things worse as the film's opening weekend gained a total of $260 million worldwide. Now, Pascal recently delivered the following to get back at some Marvel fans. All I can say right now to some Marvel fans, many of which were the naysayers, is that, see, I told you so. Our film is a huge example of how some Marvel fans just need to shut up before a film arrives in theaters, because more often than not, they look stupid when they place all bets on a film failing financially. And regardless of us pulling away from source material in some areas, for this film, we broke records, and we did such an amazing job at that. The weakest and most embarrassing complaint that I think I saw online and throughout all of social media was that the Silver Surfer was now a woman. And let me tell you, she is the best iteration of the Silver Surfer and should remain as the only one for the future of Marvel. And look, as a male feminist, I value women so much. Shalla is a character that deserves her own movie after so many naysayers changed their mind about Shalla. This is probably our biggest example when it involves Marvel films, that many fans online should not act like critics or know-it-alls when it comes to the comics or comic-driven characters. You don't always need a male or a man at the forefront, and the weakest argument that I have seen as well is that, oh well, Shalla was only in a few comics compared to Norrin Radd. Well, so what is all I have to say. If you don't like Shalla, then don't go see this movie. I don't want your business. I don't know what else to tell you at all. I think it's just another example of misogyny going on right now in this failing country, and masculinity is dying at a rapid rate right now in the US, where fandoms get so scared of female representation. Fans got their chance with Norrin Radd back in 2007 with that film, and so it was only right, it was only responsible for us to take the time over to Shalla instead to give a woman a chance in this film. And this is something that was fully mapped out by Kevin Feige. He came up to me and said, the Silver Surfer is going to be played by Julia this time, and it's going to be a woman. And I just had to give Kevin a big pat on the back for doing that and doing the right thing. Now guys, let me just say one thing about Pedro Pascal and why he's deciding to do the worst thing possible right now, right dead smack in the middle of the release of this movie, is that, look, it's a very interesting argument among critics. You know, the fact that Kevin Feige decided to just double down on Shalla instead of Norrin Radd. You know what they could have done? You know what would have actually been fair and would have actually been something very well done? Is if they actually have both Shalla and Norrin Radd having pretty much near equal screen time in this movie, maybe even as a duo in this film, to kind of do something different, do something very, something that would actually be different than what we saw back in 2007, but also giving both characters a chance. They could have done something in that respect. I think that would have been a very interesting take. But for Pedro to say that you have to double down, that you have to actually double down on Shalla or the female iteration of the Silver Surfer because of so-called lost time for female representation in the film industry, it really just screams desperation coming from Pedro Pascal, and it's really an awful take coming from him. We know that there's been a lot of, great female roles out there over the years, not just with Marvel, way back when, but also, with other characters in different fandoms, in different, actual franchises out there, I must say. It's not like that they missed out on anything, and I think it's a very poor argument coming from Pedro. Now look, we know that, one example is Pepper Potts in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Well-respected female character in the MCU, I think that we could all say that. But we've seen how Marvel and Disney lost their way throughout that process. We've seen what happened with a movie like The Marvels back in 2023. That is a big example of what you do not do with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. However, he goes on to conclude, also, to all the naysayers out there, I think it would be best to let go of the fear of female representation in films and to just enjoy the experience a little bit better. I think in many fandoms like Star Wars and Marvel, fans need to be lectured a bit. They need to be educated a bit about the importance of these things and how women need to be at the forefront more, given all the time and opportunities that they lost in this industry by being pushed to the wayside from major or supporting roles in film and television. I am just so glad that we showed many of these critics that so happen to be MAGA supporters that they were wrong in the long run about this movie, and we are gearing up to make things bigger and better than Endgame. And again, there he goes going off about MAGA this, Trump supporters that, always making things political. He just can't help himself. And this is exactly why I call him Pedro Zegler. He really does act like Rachel Zegler, if not worse than Rachel Zegler. And again, there he goes comparing this movie to Endgame. Does he really believe that Endgame is going to be on par with the Fantastic Four or vice versa? It really is not going to be, right? We all know that. I think that any Marvel fan can agree with me on that. This movie's not going to be bigger and more successful than Avengers Endgame. And that goes for both financial aspects, and that also goes for the overall perception of the film, right? And even the reception of the movie. But when you're looking at the actual box office numbers, right? The overall box office opening weekend global for Avengers Endgame, it is so different than Fantastic Four. But when you're looking at everything in comparison to this, you really can't compare Norrin Radd to Shalla. Everyone loves Norrin Radd. I think everyone would have wanted Norrin Radd at the forefront of this movie. And I would like to hear what everyone has to say about Pedro's take on female representation, Shalla, etc., etc. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.